Hello, welcome to the podcast. Once again, we are going to give a shout out to our brand new Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much indeed for supporting the podcast. It means the world to Mark, John and myself. And we have a bunch of names to read out to thank you, your shout outs, which comes as part of your Patreon subscription. So let me press on and say thank you to Maggie Lynch, to Michelle Mills, to Anna Bartolucci, a name you'll be familiar with in the next couple of weeks, Gwyn GB, which I think means Great Britain, it might be the surname, Imogen Clark, thank you Imogen, Perry Wilson, Brian Switzer, Carlin Hansen, writing as Cara Childs, thank you very much indeed. Carlin, always nice to hear from you. Daryl Donahue, Joshua, no surname, Nick Beswick, or Bezic, probably Bezic, and Simon Huggins, and finally for this batch, Sue Hollowell. As I say, very grateful indeed. You can become a supporter of the podcast at patreon.com/SPF Podcast, and you're always in with the chance of winning a unique SPF mug. Oh no, I'm drinking from my NASA mug today, but I do have an SPF mug ready to go. So we've given away, I think, 12 so far. The first 12 subscribers all got a mug sent to them. 4 more names have been picked out of the hat. I can have a quick look. I can't tell you them all necessarily, but we've got Jeff and Will at biggayfictionpodcast.com. They're getting a mug, so they can share it on their podcast. Kevin Partner's getting a mug. Who else? I think that's Simon Huggins. You're going to be getting a mug this week. So, and there's at least one more other, and we're going to pull 2 names out next week as well. So if you want to be in with a chance of winning a mug, if you just want to support us, do you want to hear your name on the podcast, head over to patreon.com/SPF Podcast. Okay, I'm adding these on at the beginning because it's the middle of the summer period. Mark's been in Tenerife enjoying himself. I'm going to Florida at the weekend. John has just been on a cruise in the Med. That means we've pre-recorded quite a batch of podcasts to go over these summer months. They're all good, fantastic interviews coming up, but it's not quite as spontaneous as it will be back when we get going again in September, when Mark and I will do the shout-outs together for Patreon. But for now, let's crack on with what is a good podcast.
2 writers, one just starting out, the other a bestseller. Join James Blatch and Mark Dawson and their amazing guests as they discuss how you can make a living telling stories. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Yes, hello and welcome to the SPF Podcast with James and Mark. With you again, and this week we have an author who has been trad, hasn't he, Brett? I believe
he has, yes.
Yeah, and is finding his way in. He's got we'll go into it in a little bit of detail in the podcast, but he's one of those authors who found himself with some of his books locked in old deals and writing new stuff as well. Lovely guy, very early riser, gets up very early, works in the dark.
Oh dear.
Even in California, where you'd think he'd probably want to be. I mean, I think he is trying to sort that out in his life. He's trying to sleep in later and use up more of the sunshine, sort of vampire existence. Yeah, it's always. I always love hearing, and we get feedback that you do as well, hearing how people's routines differ, what they do to get the words done, and how they write, and so on. So that's what we always ask our authors, and Brett was a good example of that. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of house notes. We mention every week, if we can, that we have patreon.com. If you want to become a bigger part of the podcast, you want to help us preserve it and keep it going, go to patreon.com/SPF Podcast, and you get an opportunity to become a subscriber with some goodies available to you. And you can pick up a book from us. So we've produced quite a few books now, and there are more coming out. And these books are designed to help you navigate the world of self-publishing. So they cover various subjects, and the most exciting one perhaps is AMS Ads, which is the new all-singing, dancing ads platform for authors. It's been extended at least to the .com domain so far.
.com with more coming, yes. I've heard some rumours that others will be coming soon. And that book was co-written with me, actually mostly written by Joseph Alexander, who is an alumni of the course, and also I think 2 Fridays or 3 Fridays ago he expected to go through £1 million in royalties for his guitar book. So he does know what he's talking about. He's very big on AMS ads. I've seen some of his numbers, and frankly, it fills me with jealousy to see how low his ACOS score is. His average cost of sales score tends to be very profitable for him. So he's a really knowledgeable guy when it comes to those books. And also, I think one of the giveaways, or a giveaway that we have also with that book, is a video course with me, going through how I set up my Amazon ads and some tips and tricks to get you cracking with regards to doing that better.
Yeah, so if you just visit selfpublishingformula.com, you'll see links to the books where you can get them, and they're all free, of course, to you. Mark and I are both in the lab at the moment with new services. And Mark, you talked briefly, you mentioned Messenger Bot, which is the Facebook Messenger service, automated messenger for people who click on, well, so you just initiate it with a click on a link, don't you?
More than that, James.
More than
that. I've got an ad running at the moment for my books where it's a contest. So
Okay.
I ask a question: which do you prefer, character A or character B? So let's say Jack Reacher and Alex Cross, and depending, well, it doesn't really matter what people say. You encourage them to leave a comment with their answer. Whatever they say, they are automatically sent a message through Facebook Messenger, thanking them for their comment and asking them whether they'd like to get a free copy of the first in my Milton series. And the engagement on that is through the roof. You can run those as a Facebook ad. You can run that and set engagement as your objective, which means that Facebook will try and optimize the ad so that you're looking for likes and comments and shares and that kind of thing. So you're getting very, very cheap interaction with the ad, and then every person who interacts with it gets a message whereby they can get that free book. And then automatically after a couple of weeks, I'll ask them whether they enjoyed the book and whether they'd like another free book. And at that point, to get the next free book, they have to sign up to my mailing list. And I typically find once people start reading my books, they're quite addictive, and people will then go on to the books that they have to pay for. So early days yet to see exactly how profitable those ads have been, but the tech is really, really cool, and no one's doing this yet. It's really it is the Wild West out there at the moment. Still trying to work out what the rules are. Facebook is a bit vague on what you can and can't do. So I'm the crash test dummy for this. And one of the things that we'll be doing, 99% sure I'll have a module for this when we relaunch ads for authors in November.
Yeah, and we will also have a module on Pinterest, which is what I'm in the lab experimenting on at the moment. So Pinterest, and I think we look at these platforms both for advertising, self-publishing formula courses, as well as for authors. And I think Pinterest is one that's really going to suit authors, perhaps more than other businesses, particularly if you have a specialist area. Let's say you write in a particular area of fantasy, or in my case, military fiction. In your case, I don't know. What are people interested in?
I was going to say, I don't want to get into your specialist areas of fiction, no. James.
But because it's a visual medium, so anoraks like me will go on and look at Cold War jets and fighters, and the internet's full of these really interesting pictures. But it might be, an area for of wizards and witches and wizards and witches, or fantasy characters. And Pinterest are great places for all these pictures to go. And that is a perfect place for you to advertise your book, a free book giveaway, or whatever it is that you want to do. So Pinterest looks really, really exciting. I can't get them to take my money at the moment, but they always have hiccups like this in the laboratory.
I'll take your money.
Yeah, you always take my money. Okay, but that's enough waffling from us. Let's get to beautiful California, or a slightly dark interior of California, and talk to our featured author for this week, who is Brett Battles.
I wanted to be a writer since I was in grade school, and it just took me a long time to get there. I finally... I was in a writer's group that, I wrote a few novels in there, sent them out, got hundreds of rejections, of course. Finally, I think it was the third book I had written, which I was sending out. I had gotten tons of rejections on that. I was about to put that on the shelf and start a fourth book when a friend of mine, who I had once been in the same writer's group with me, introduced me to a small publisher that he was at, or he said, send them your book, I'll let them know you're coming. I sent them the book, didn't hear from them for like 11 months, and in that meantime I wrote another book thinking that was never going to happen, and all of a sudden they called me and said, we want to buy your book, which was great, except that 6 months later they ended up going bankrupt, and my book hadn't come out yet. So I thought, oh no, I got to start all over again. But then they did the cool thing. They had a contact at Random House who they contacted, showed them my book, and Random House bought my book from them and gave me a 3-book deal. So that book that they bought is The Cleaner, my first book, and the beginning of my Jonathan Quinn series. And I ended up doing 5 books for Random House. I would have loved to do more, but that was my first book. Came out in 2007. I finished my next book, The Deceived, and that came out in 2008. And at that same time, I've got my contract for my next 3 books, which was large enough to allow me to quit my job for a couple of years. I thought, okay, I can quit for at least 2 years on this, and I can try to write full time. So I quit my job, and that was in actually. Now I have to back up timing wise. It was, I'm sorry, the first book was, first contract was 3 books. I quit the job in September 2010, like 1 week before Lehman Brothers went over. I mean, no, 2000, God, I'm getting all confused on my dates. 2008, 2009, whatever.
I spend several moments a day doing exactly this. I mean, I hate it. Yeah, someone asked me how old I am.
I've lost it all. Actually, I think it was 2008. And then Lehman Brothers went out of business like a week after I left my job, and the whole crash happened. But I had my contract, so I was cool. So my 3rd book came out the following summer. Then the next 2 books, and I was still writing the next 2 books on my contract. But then things went crazy in the publishing industry as well at around this time. This was 2009, going into 2010, and my editor ended up leaving for Penguin. Then Bantam Dell and Ballantine, 2 imprints at Random House, were merged, and the head of Bantam Dell was a big supporter of mine, and she was ousted because you can only have one head of the label. So all of a sudden, I'm at this new Bantam Dell Ballantine combined label with nobody that had asked me to be there in the first place, and I was put with a junior editor who we did not exactly see eye to eye on things, and so when it came time for a new contract in 2010, this is where that comes in. Now I remember. Okay, I was kind of ready to move on, and it was clear when because I still had to present my idea. It was clear that they were ready to move on from me. And so we split ways, even though there was still a couple books to come out. We split ways in August of 2010, or September, somewhere around there, in the summer of 2010, I believe. And then I was sitting there with the task of what path should I take next? Because I'm still writing full time, and I want to continue writing full time. I don't want to go back to a desk job. And I was panicked about that. And I talked to my agent, and we came up with, she said, well, let's write a new book, and I'll take it out to publishers. But, clearly we can't do it in your old series because other publishers don't like to pick up series halfway in the middle. And which is a bummer because that series was doing fairly well and everything. And
as a writer, you're attached to the characters, right?
Absolutely.
You've got an emotional investment.
So I didn't want to lose that, but what could I do? But I had 4 books in that series and a standalone that came out from Random House. But at the same time, and actually even before the stuff with me leaving Random House happened, the whole ebooks thing was starting to take off. And I had some friends who were doing it, and I'd been talking to them more and more. Joe Conrath, Blake Crouch, even Barry Eisler was starting to get into a little bit of that stuff. And I was talking to these guys, and when I finally was on my own, I was thinking, you know what? I really want to dip my toe into this and see what it would be like. And I talked to my agent, and luckily my agent, super cool, completely understands, has always been supportive of my career, no matter what choice I decided to go in. And we decided that I would write 2 books, one that she would take out to publishers, and one that I would just try on ebooks. And
when you say ebooks, you mean self-publish?
Self-publish,
Yeah.
so indie publish. At that time, it was really the only thing you were thinking was like ebooks, even though
Sure.
you can do them in print and everything like that. So I'm blessed because I actually write very fast. Always have. It's just the way, everybody has their own speed. Mine happens to be fairly fast and constant. And I'm working every day. You can quickly get a book done if you're always working, and it's full time. So it's not like I'm just putting an hour in. I could, 6 hours or whatever it is every day, getting a lot of material out. And so I got these 2 books written, and the book that I wanted her to take, or I gave to her to take out, was it's a thriller, very personal kind of thriller kind of thing. But she was hoping for something that had just like a big concept kind of thing to go to a new publisher. Well, my other book had the big concept thing, but I was really thinking that needed to come out right away. Because it was more appropriate. I mean, I thought I was catching the wave. It was the first in I have a pre/post-apocalyptic virus series, and that was the first book in that, and it's called Sick, and that was back before a lot of that had started to get going. This was 2010, going into early 2011. And she read it too, and she really liked it, but she also agreed with me that, if she tried to go to publishers, it would still be another year before it came out, and, the delay would be crazy. And she said, go ahead and, let's just put both of them out and see what happens.
Oh, well, she was happy for you to put the other book that was initially slated for the industry to be self-published as well.
Yeah.
That is a cool agent, a very supportive person.
She was very cool with that. Because I was also very anxious to try it. And so I ended up putting those, I put up the first book, which was Little Girl Gone, which was the thriller, in, I think, March or April of 2011. And then Sick went out in May or June. And then I also wrote a prequel novel to my series. Actually, I called it a novella back then. It's like 59,000 words, but I didn't want to cause any waves or anything. So I wrote this long novella that was a prequel to my Quinn Cleaner series. And I put that out in the middle of the summer. And I also had a desk novel. I had a couple of short stories that had been lying around. And by the end of the year, I had 7 different things that I had put up. And I didn't break land speed records as far as sales or anything that first year, but I could see the potential of what was going on. And I could see how it was actually starting to work. And every time I had a new book, it was like building a snowball, and it was all feeding on itself and growing. And so I made it through 2011 without having to take a job. And although it was close, 1 month I got very close, but after that it started getting better. And then 2012 was a really good year, brought out another 3 or 4 novels that year. 2013 was a really good year, and it just kept going and going and going. So, I've been basically independent published since then, although 47 North, Amazon's imprint, picked up my time travel novel Rewinder and re-released it, and then they brought out the sequel, the second book in that series, Destroyer. They brought that out directly, and then I brought out the third one of that this year. So there, I'm still kind of mixing back and forth on that, but.
And that's great. I've got lots to ask you about that journey. But what's the situation with the traditionally published books? They're still in legal with them.
I haven't even. I mean, I've talked to my agent about, hey, well, maybe we can try to get them back, but they're still selling. I mean, ebook wise.
Yeah, the Cleaner I noticed. I mean, you see that popping up all over the place, so that's presumably still doing business.
Yeah, it's still popping up, and In fact, I think Random House is running a BookBub ad on The Deceived, which is the second book in the series, like next week or something like that, or in 2 weeks. I only know that because I tried to get an ad for one of my other books, and
you were beaten by yourself.
I was beaten by myself. I was going, what?
Yeah.
Because the Quinn series, which would have died after leaving Random House, I've continued to write it. Once all the books were out, I've continued to write it. And next week on Tuesday, the 11th book in that series is coming out. So there had only been 4, and I've written 7 more, not counting the the prequel that I wrote. So 12 books in that series are out, plus a few short stories and stuff that would have never seen the light of day if it wasn't for the ability to be independently published these days. But with the new book coming out next week, I was kind of hoping to get a BookBub on ad for the book that I bought out last year, but maybe later in the summer. We'll see.
And the legal side of things, so I'm not, Mark's the lawyer, I'm not, and I'm not that au fait with the contracts, but for instance, I mean, you've got your character, Jonathan Quinn, in the series, but you are free to write new Jonathan Quinn books despite the fact...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I own the copyright on the books. They don't own the copyright. They are licensed to publish the particular books that they have contracted with me. They don't own the characters. They have no control over the characters. I think that's true for all authors, I would think.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether that happens. Just wondering if Ian Fleming was still alive, he could write a James Bond book for Random House and then a James Bond book for Bloomsbury the next week.
He could. Well, it depends. I mean, there might be, depending on how much they're paying you. A lot of times they don't want. There'll be the non-compete clause in there, but that only extends until you're out of contract with them. They still have the books. I can't get I would love to get the rights back because I would love to be just having that, controlling how that income comes in directly. But I still see the royalty checks. It's just they'd be a lot bigger if I was self-published.
Yeah, well, 75% a lot bigger than 5%. Whatever it is.
Exactly. 15% or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, we're 15. You did well. So, but that's, I mean, it's a fascinating story, Brett, because in some ways it's like the best and the worst of the traditional industry. You kind of relied on relationships and individuals to keep your career going, which it shouldn't be like that really, but of course it is.
Right. Of course. It's like in anything.
Yeah, really. Of course. I accept that. But when you're a writer and you've got a creative person, you want to create things, being so much at the whim of supportive individuals, whereas the self-publishing world, it really isn't like that. There's a lot more freedom to, if you're going to fail, it's because it's not because somebody got in your way, it's because you didn't do something right, or the book wasn't good enough, not just somebody behind a desk you've never met who didn't know you and thought, I'm not going to do this.
Right. Exactly.
So do you, I mean, you must feel that sense of freedom.
It is nice. I mean, there is, taking a step back, it is nice in the traditional world that there are things that get taken care of that you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
But I do like having the control over it. I like being able to decide on the covers for my books and guide those. And I like being able to choose my own titles. Not that you can't in the traditional world, but it's more of you're suggesting what the title is, and more times than not, they'll say, yeah, that's fine. But for instance, I had one of my books, my third book in the Quinn series. All my Quinn series it's The Cleaner, The Deceived, The Silence, The Destroyed, blah, blah, blah. Next week is The Aggrieved. So, there's a pattern to them. The third book in the series, I wanted to call The Unwanted. And in fact, over in the UK, that's exactly what it's called because my UK publisher was fine with that. But my US publisher felt like it sounded too much like a Western. So they renamed it Shadow of Betrayal, which
suddenly goes off on one, yeah.
It's like, what? It's like, there's nothing I can do about that.
At least I didn't call it.
I was not happy. I mean, it's a very generic title to me, and I liked the theme before, and it didn't bother me if somebody thought Western in it. They're very quickly going to realize that it's not a Western. Even from the cover, they would recognize that it's not a Western.
These are all very sort of arbitrary decisions, aren't they? Well, at least they didn't come up with a funny thing happened on the way to the Pentagon or something. Completely off-field.
Terrible. Terrible.
Although I think that's a good title.
Yeah, I mean, well, depending on what you're writing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, bringing up to date then, so you're now in the self-publishing world. Are you doing?
I am.
You're doing all of this yourself? Do you have a team working for you? Do you outsource?
Well, I outsource. Obviously, I outsource the covers for sure. I always make sure I try to get very top talent for that. I have an editor I work with all the time, a proofreader who, a second proofreader who does a final pass on everything. I format the books myself. I early on, because back when I was first starting, I was wanted to be very careful with cost and everything like that, and I knew that there were certain costs I couldn't get around. But that there were some costs I could. I taught myself how to format ebooks and the print books. So I still do that myself.
What do you use to do that out of interest? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
What do you use to do that out of interest?
I use, for the print books, I'm just doing it basically in Word and then converting it into PDF and everything. And I've been using Calibre, or however the heck you want to pronounce it, very effectively for a while. I understand there are things like Vellum and a couple other things that actually do the job even better and easier. I just haven't taken the time to learn them, which I'll just mark off as my own laziness.
Well, that's fine.
But
whatever's working for you. Right?
I mean, it's working at the moment. I keep expecting to one day I convert a book and it looks completely wrong and I don't know what the heck happened, and then I go, what do I do now?
That's when you employ somebody.
Yes, exactly.
And what, out of interest, sorry, just going back a little bit, what was the job you were doing? What career were you in?
Oh, I worked in television for 20 years. Nothing too glamorous by any means. For the most part, I worked in the television graphics world. We did IDs for networks and main titles for TV shows and graphics for network type promos for shows and stuff. I wasn't a designer either. I was a producer. So I was a project coordinator, making sure everybody did. My last position was executive producer in the on-air graphics department at E! Entertainment, which is the showbiz. It's a showbiz show. It's where, God forbid, we're keeping up with the Kardashians started. Not my fault.
Well, you say it's not your fault, but you're executive producer of the graphics. So
I was there. I was there when that show started.
You made sure it was spelt correctly. Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody did. I think I sloughed that job off on somebody else, probably.
But you had this period of transition. I mean, it's there's very few writers who can say that it was a smooth journey from beginning to end. But it sounded reasonably scary for you that first year or 2 years of self-publishing, when you were going month to month wondering if this was going to work.
Right. As far as the transition from full-time other job to full-time writer actually went fairly well, because that was still in the Random House days when they were only expecting one novel out of me a year, and since I write fast, that's not going to take me all that long. Which I now look back and see I had a lot of wasted time, because there was I was basically, it ended up me working part-time just to get one novel done a year. That's, I could have written a whole bunch of other things in that time and just used it, and still had a lot of great time to do other things. But that was fine. It was 2 years in when I suddenly lost the contract. I knew it was coming, but when I was out of contract with Random House, or I didn't have a new contract for anything new, and I had to figure out what I was going to do, and I wasn't sure what step. Yeah, that was scary. I mean, that year, 2011, when I was bringing out those books, I think it was October of that year, because I was projecting ahead on income and stuff, and when you're self-publishing, you can see what your income is every month, and it's 2 months ahead of time, as you know. So what you're going to make in this particular month or this particular month. So you could project ahead, and I could see that it was going to start to get better, but it wasn't going to start to get better until this one point. And I saw my low point was going to be October of that month. And I knew that I'd been using all the resources and my savings and everything just to keep going, because I desperately didn't want to take a job again, because this is really what I've always wanted to do, and I wanted to keep doing it. And I came very close to not having enough money for the rent that month, but I didn't. But it didn't upset me, because I knew the next month I would, and the month after that I would. The sales were picking up that much, and I was actually going to be able to start putting a little bit away, until I got to the point where I was able to put quite a bit away, every month. So, that was a little scary that first year, but and it was one of these things where I remember when I first started out, even when it was just I might have even just been when I just had the one book up, Little Girl Gone. Every single day I would check and see how much sales I had. Every single day. And finally, I think it was Blake Crouch who told me once at a conference, he said, "You got to stop that, man. You got to, once a month or something like that. Don't, you can't do that, or you're going to drive yourself crazy." Because I was living or dying on my daily sales. And it would make me crazy and make it hard to write if I had a bad day, or, sales wise and everything. And so I went cold turkey at that point, and I only checked the sales at the end of the month. So, which made a big difference.
Yeah, that sounds like
from that point.
A sanity move that
total sanity
you need
move.
To do. But you probably
but it's a natural reaction to want to see where you're going, and especially since it was something new.
Yeah, of course.
You want to see, check every day.
And in actual fact, there was probably some benefit from you becoming intimately familiar with sales patterns and how it works before you were then able to take a step back.
Yeah.
So I think we all do that in our businesses at the beginning. You pour over everything, and then you realise that you're going grayer quicker than you needed to. So. Okay. Right. So in terms of that marketing side of things in those early days, I mean, I did another interview earlier today of somebody who just simply uploaded their book in 2011 and then sat back and it took off, and she's not really sure why. Maybe Amazon pushed it or whatever. But these days it's a tougher environment, I think.
Tougher.
But what were you doing then? Were you doing anything more than uploading and sitting back?
Not a ton more. I hate marketing. I hate doing all that stuff and the PR stuff, and I still do, and I'm struggling with it right now because I think in the last 6 to 9 months I've actually seen a dip in my sales, which is frustrating. But it's because I haven't been doing a lot of marketing and everything, and I'm so bad at it, and so I'm trying to step my game up again. But back in the day, I think the only thing I did was I probably did sent a newsletter out. Back then, I don't know how big my list was. 1,500 people, and it's not like every one of them are going to buy the book. But I would send that out, and I would do a little bit of Facebook and Twitter stuff, and that was it. And then I just let it go. Now I cannot deny that it helped that I have a built-in audience from my previous books.
Sure.
There are people who knew who I was. I wasn't coming in this completely as an unknown. So that helped. And, and that's shown over the years. And especially when I have a Quinn book come out, that's when I always get, everybody comes back, or not everybody, but a lot of people come back for those. It's when I try something new, or I dip into science fiction or something, that I'm always, taking a bigger risk and everything. But yeah, I think that, since then I try to do some BookBub ads, but I'm not always getting those. I think part of it is that most of my books are in Kindle Select, because I've just found that the page reads I get far outweigh any of the sales I was getting on under the other platforms, or I have in the past. I'm starting to rethink that now with the way things have, the dip that has been happening, just to see if I can shake it up a little bit some other way. But I would do that. Still the newsletter. I've been actually trying in the last few months more actively to increase the number of people who get my newsletter, because I never really took much, it just kind of organically grew without me doing anything. Not a ton, but what I mean is anybody who came, I had nothing to do with. But now I'm trying a little bit more. If people sign up for my newsletter, they get a free copy of the Quinn prequel downloads for them, or they can download that. And I've done a little advertising around that to get people. So that's one thing that I've been doing. I have, I've been looking around trying to find other ways to do it. What I really need is somebody who wants to do all this for me.
Yeah.
So that I can just write.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do. I mean, that's all any writer wants to do, right?
Yeah.
I envy the authors who are actually really good at this and have the gung-ho to go out and go, well, you got to do this and this and this, and you got to do this and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I just want to write my book and then move on to the next one, That's the reality, right?
You're not alone in feeling like that, and some people want to do it but can't do it. Just find technically that they're not adept at it, and there's definitely space. I mean, we've got people in our community who are superb at it, right. And I occasionally people like yourself, Brett, and one or two other sort of approach to saying, look, can you put me in touch with somebody who'll run it for me? But it's actually quite a hard thing to find somebody to. I do think there is a gap in the market there for technically adept marketers to help self-publishers and run their campaigns for them. But we're all about empowering you to do it. That's our whole thing. So it's not quite our thing. Because that's the way it has to be too. So it's good that you're doing it. I just struggle with it so much. But I can't. I have to try it. So I try different things and trying new things and everything. But you are doing a load of stuff.
Services.
So you've had a list for quite a long time then, from the early days. And the novella that you wrote, did you write that specifically thinking it would be a giveaway, a lead magnet? No,
I that was the one that I released in 2011, the summer of 2011. It was just another revenue generator for me as far as I was concerned at that time. Well, I mean, in a way, I guess it still is as a giveaway, hopefully. But I was looking at it more as a direct, just for sale kind of item that I put up.
Yeah.
I'm looking for different things like that. Trying different services that are out there because, most of them don't. I think a lot of the services that are out there are just things trying to get money from authors.
Yeah. You definitely. I mean, that's the other thing to say about having somebody come in and do your stuff. There's a fairly large number of companies that we find quite annoying, who are bordering on charlatan in the way that.
Well, I think it would be great to have somebody you come in and say, okay, look, if you can, here is where I have this chunk of books, and they're all self-published. We can do whatever we can. If you can. And here is where I am at right now, income level. If you can raise my income level X amount of dollars, you will get X percent, 10% of that.
Yeah.
Or 20% or whatever. I think that would be a way of doing it. Whereas their performance is tied to your performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you may get a call.
I don't know if that's possible.
You may get a call after this interview. Who knows?
Hey, I am actually. I would be interested in somebody who could do that because that would be benefit for both of us.
Yeah.
And I've got how many now? I've got the book coming out next month is my 31st novel, and only 5, 6, 7 because of the 2 at 47 North. So I'm not 30. It's 31st novel. So that's 24 novels plus. Some short stories and I think another short novella that are all up. So I have like almost 30 pieces of property or pieces that are up self-published, for sale up there. So there's a lot to work with.
Yeah, there's a good. The shelf's well stacked.
The shelf is well stacked, and it continues to get stacked. I'm about a quarter of the way or almost a third of the way into my next novel. So. writing it. So,
well, let's talk about the writing, because we're all writers and we're fascinated with how other people approach these things. You talk about, I mean, a lot of writers will work for an hour, actually write for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, maybe. And you talked earlier about doing a full day's writing. Is that? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the 7 years ago, I was probably doing 6-7 hours a day, 8 hours a day, maybe. And I was, I looked at it as a job, and because it's my job is, I sit down for these amount of days and I work at least 5 days a week, getting X amount of words out per week. That's really how I looked at it. I have a daily word goal, which has steadily come down over the years.
Can you share that?
And yeah, sure. I mean, in the past, when I first went full time and was self-publishing, I was actually trying to get anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 words a day, which is crazy now I think about it, but I was doing it back then. And then I started getting into the 3,500 to 4,000 range, and then like down to 30,000. I have now settled on, if I can get 2,500 words a day, I'm happy. Yesterday was 3,000. Today I only got 1,500, so I'm not quite as happy today as I was yesterday. But it's it's the job. It's just keep moving forward, because if you do that, if you're getting 2,000 words a day, that's 10,000 words a week. Yeah. In 7 to 8 weeks, you got a $70,000 to $80,000 or $80,000, 70,000 to 80,000 word
Freudian slip
book. Yeah, Freudian slip. That's a good size. And then if you get a weekend in here or there with a few, you got 8,500 word or 85,000 word novel, and that's right in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And then a month or two to get it edited and everything. In 4 months you got a book. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're good, it better be good, but
sure.
That's totally something separate.
I knew there was a catch. It can't.
Yeah, there is always that catch.
Can't just be the same word. No. So in terms of your approach to the actual structure and writing, how do you draft and how do you redraft and edit, etc.?
I kind of treat I don't do a formal outline. I'm not an outliner. But I usually go into a book with an idea of where I want to go, or at least a direction I'm headed, sort of, and I have characters, and especially if it's one of my series, it's very easy. I've got my characters and I just kind of go. I may not even understand what the mystery is I'm writing. I know there is going to be some sort of mystery. I mean, every book is a mystery. Even if it's just a drama, it's a mystery because we don't know what's going to happen, right? So I don't know what the mystery is going to be at the end of my thriller or how things are necessarily, but I'm heading there and I'm setting things up, and it just kind of naturally comes to me. And I treat my first draft kind of as my 80 to 90,000 words. My books usually fall somewhere between 70 and 90,000 words, and I treat that as my first draft in essence. And I mean, it's a pretty solid first draft, although there's going to be crap all over it. And then I go back and I do a really heavy-handed rewrite of all of that to get everything straightened out and cleaned up as much as possible. And then I go back and do it again, trying to get it all nice and clean. And if I feel like it, I'll do a third polish pass on that. If I'm happy with where it is, I'll send it to my editor, and then we'll go from there. She is more of my copy editor with a light story pass at this point.
Okay.
I do think that authors that are still starting out definitely need story editors. I think if after 30 books, if I can't figure out where the story is and where the problems are, then I shouldn't be writing. But that said, she is a story editor for other people, so she also will point out little things, because you do still need that. You're always going to miss these little things that are intuitive to you. You think, yeah, everybody's going to catch that or know what that is. And she goes, well, this and this. And I go, okay. And it's usually, I've never had anything big in the last 4 or 5 years. So, it's all just little, a line here, line there, just to clarify something and stuff like that. So
okay.
That's the process for me. basically.
And so a slight practical question: what do you actually write on?
I write on. I use Microsoft Word, and I write on a Macintosh, a Mac. I don't know what the desktop model. I'm looking at it right now.
So you use Word, and do you? This is very nitty, but sort of thing I'm interested in as well. So do you like fill up one Word document? I mean, that can be quite a big unwieldy document, and 90,000 words in it.
Oh yeah,
do you
I
do
just
chapters?
go from beginning to end.
Oh, okay.
No, I go from beginning to end. And now that I because I format my own ebooks, I actually, as I'm writing, I'm formatting it so that I don't. So it makes it easier when I actually finish the book and go. So I'm putting in headlines on each chapter so that it automatically will generate a table of contents, that kind of thing, as I'm going along. And it also with the new Word, you can actually bring up the table of content or contents on the side, so I can click to chapter to chapter to chapter if I want as I'm going along. So that works out great. But yeah, it's all just one big document. I never even thought about doing separate. That never even dawned on me. And then I think Scrivener does that or something like that.
Yeah, Scrivener's used by a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, my friend Bill Cameron uses that, and he pushed that, and I think I saw some picture with him, and it had all these different windows and stuff, and I'm going, too much information. Just let me write my story, and that my story, and then I have my little Post-it notes that I write things on and stick it all over my desk, and then I'm happy.
There's your Scrivener. I think your Scrivener is on the desk. And
that's your Post-it notes over there. But I don't want that. I want them practically where I can touch them.
Yeah. So you're writing a kind of the final formatted thing in your Word document. It's almost like pre-printing press, how the monks, when they drew out, they wrote their books and flourish right from the beginning, being done. There's something very lovely.
Right. Well, I always like to think of myself as a monk.
Yeah. That's great. We've raced through. We're coming up to 40 minutes, which is normally kind of where we stop it. But I've got to. I know it's unbelievable. It's been great, but I want to keep it going for a little bit longer if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Well, people, I think, will be engaged.
I'm not doing anything.
Well, although I am aware you've only done 1,500 words today, I don't want you to blame
I'm not going to do any more on that, although there's a short story I'm supposed to be given to somebody that I'll probably take a look at a little later, but that's...
And I'm just going to finish off on the writing stuff. So your kind of writing routine, do you write at the same time of day? You sit at the same desk?
It's interesting. I do sit at the same desk. I write at my dining room table. Just because there's no dedicated office in my house, but this works out fine. It's perfect. I am in transition on when I write over the last, as several of my friends know and laugh at me about, over the last, I don't know, 6 years or so, and I don't know how I got into the habit, but actually, I kind of do. Back when I was having a full-time job and still writing, I would get up early before work, write for an hour or two, then go to work, then write after work. Now, or over the last 6 years, I developed the habit of getting up like at 4 a.m, and I would be writing by 5:30. And I'd be done by 10 or 11 in the morning, and then I'd be asleep by 8 o'clock at night. That was the problem on the back end.
Yeah.
So I am trying to shift that now. I like today I was up at 5, which was great. That's sleeping into me. So we're getting there. I'm hoping to move it to more like where I'm getting up like 5:30 or 6. But I still want to be done around noon, 1 o'clock. Now that said, that's when I'm writing new material. If I'm in an editing phase, I tend to go for longer days. I'll go, I may go 12 hours, from 6 to 6 or 5 to 5, working on that because I'm not coming up with new material necessarily. So the stuff I'm working on is there in front of me, so I can keep going.
Is that because you function better in the morning, or because you like to have some time to yourself in the afternoon?
I'm definitely a person who can wake up and start doing what I need to do, and And I like that. And it's nice and quiet in the
Yeah.
morning, especially, at 4 a.m. I love the darkness, and I love just the silence of the world at that point of day. But, I feel like I need to get back into the world of the living. So
meet some other people during the daylight hours.
I'm really becoming a hermit sometimes. Sometimes it's just me and my dog for days on end, and it's probably not a good thing. Not for her. I know she doesn't like it.
I bet the dog's sleeping at 5 o'clock in the morning when you're writing.
She sleeps, but then she comes in and wants attention, and
Okay.
Australian Shepherd, too hyper. She wants everything.
Yeah. They need a lot of attention. And I think you're in California.
More.
Yeah, you're in California.
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles. Glendale, but basically Los Angeles.
Yeah. So you've got some lovely climate out there and some genuinely nice daylight. So you should definitely try and make the most of daylight.
Yeah, I should actually take advantage of that.
Yeah. At some point. But whatever works for you, right? And I think all of us feel if we've got something that's working for us, you always feel you don't want to jinx it.
That's exactly right, and that was kind of why it took me a long time to even try to change it. But it's so true. It's whatever works for you is what you should be doing, because the important thing is to write as much as you can. And I don't mean as much as you can in a given session. I mean as many days as you can. I mean, write every day. That would be as much as you can. Or if it's as much as you can is once a month, then you have to write that once a month. But you write as much as you can, and if you can push it for a little bit more, you do.
And in terms of the stories and books, then, so you start off and you kind of have a vague idea, and it's a mystery. Right. It's a mystery to you as much as anybody else at the very beginning of the book.
Often, I mean, yes, to a larger extent. Like I said, I usually have an idea of where it's going, or the theme that I'm going to try to be playing with, or something like that. But I don't like to do involved outlines, because I do want the story to kind of tell itself to me. I'll sit down in the morning and start writing, and all of a sudden there'll be characters showing up. When I woke up that day, I had no idea even existed, or were going to exist, I guess. And I like that. I like that element of surprise. I like when something fun happens that I just never even saw coming. And if I had to work from an outline, I feel like it would be creative death for me personally. Not everybody's this way, but I know some people. I have very good friends who loved outline, and they love the structure of it and everything. But for me, I just feel like, well, then I'm just retelling what I've already written here. Why? Well,
but those, I mean, there's a confidence to that writing that you have. And was that always there? I mean, those first couple of drafts you did, those first couple of books that didn't get picked up, taking you all the way back. I mean, did you outline them, or did you have the same kind of? I'm trying to. I think. Well, I did them in a writers group, so I probably did outline them. I had a mentor who ran the group, who was a published author and everything, and so I'm pretty sure he probably had us do that. But I can't even remember now. But I think, for me, the biggest thing that ever happened was finishing that first book. Once I finished that first book, it told me that I can actually finish a book. Yeah. I was probably, when I finished that, I was probably late 30s when I finally finished my first book. And I'd been saying since I was 12 years old I was going to be a novelist. So it took a long time to get there, But once you finish that first book, because the thing is, and I think this is for a lot of writers starting out, is that the most daunting thing is getting to the end of that book, that first book. How am I ever going to get there? Once you do get there, you realize, oh, I can get there. I can do this. And the next book is like, when I start a book now, I'm never thinking, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish it. Yeah.
That thought never even enters my mind. And it hasn't since book 2 or 3, probably even book 2. Once I finished that first book, after that, it was like, oh yeah, I know I'll finish this. There are a few books way back then that I would start and that I didn't finish, but none of the books that I've started, that I've sat down and said, okay, I'm going to work on this book now, I've finished them all. You know, I have written some scenes or some starts for other books only because I didn't want to forget them. And I go, oh, here, this would be good for this. I want to maybe someday come to this. Let me just write a little bit on it. But when I literally have set the task of writing X book, I finish X book because I know I can.
Yeah.
And it never even crosses my mind that I won't.
Well, that's
that's a confidence that comes from doing.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting, well, it's brilliantly put, and I completely agree with you. As somebody writing their first book, I sort of feel at the moment I'm in a place I can't envisage finishing it, to be honest, and I am at a tough place with it at the moment. It's a mountain, but I can see that thing clicks over, that once you've done that one book and finished it and seen it, as you say, mentally, the next book will feel different. I'd love to know what that feels like, but maybe one day.
Well, I would also say to you that when you finish that first book, or when you finish the draft of that first book, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it can be complete crap. But you get to the end. The most important thing for me was always getting to the end. And you may be one of these people. My friend Rob is this way. He's always rewriting and getting everything perfect so that when he gets to the end of his book, he's basically done. He may go back and do a polish pass, but he doesn't have to go back and do a rewrite. I have to do like this major rewrite of my book because it's full of blah. But what I've done is I've just pushed through to the end because I know what I need, and I'm just throwing the stuff out there that I'm going to need. That it's going to need tuning up, but I want to make sure I have something to work with, and I get everything, or sometimes I will get 3/4 of the way done, and I'll say, you know what, I need to go back and clean up everything so I can write the end correctly. And I've done that several times, but it's the same principle. But I would say to you, just, even if you're having problems, push through the parts that you're having problems, and give yourself the tools to finish, and then to go back and polish it up. It doesn't have to be perfect when you finish. That comes in the next stage.
That's really.
I think too many people worry about perfection on that first draft, and that's bullshit. Can I say that? Yeah.
You can say that there. But, you can say it. But it is.
But it really is.
It is that confidence thing, and it's that nagging doubt that what you're doing is no good, which I think I don't know whether that ever goes away, but
no, I mean I often, a lot of my books I think, oh, this is crap. And then by the time I finish, I go, yeah, this is pretty good, I think. I don't know.
That is true. Whenever I sit back occasionally and read back what I've written, I think, this is quite good. But that's the only moment I think that. The rest of the time I think...
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But I just don't think... that. You know what? Give yourself permission to write crap.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't worry about whether it's good or not. Just write it.
Yeah. That's great.
And then you can fix it later.
That's great advice, Brett. So let's finish off on the future for you. So I know you it's harbour doing a little bit more marketing, maybe, even though you kind of don't like it, but you feel you've got your products there. Or maybe we're going to hook you up with somebody. That would be great.
Please.
We'll follow that story.
Help me out. Help me.
And in terms of the books, you mentioned sci-fi. You've got obviously Jonathan Quinn. Is that going to continue? Quinn's
absolutely
going strong.
It's going strong. We've had some major developments within the grander story of the whole series in the last couple of books, and this book is a direct reaction to the previous book. But it's continuing. I already I've already planned for at least the 12th, which is next year, and so it'll go on, I'm sure, beyond that. As long as it stays fresh for me. What I don't like is series that just feel like they're just going on because the writer was getting paid to do it, So I have the Quinn series. I actually last fall started a spin-off series from it called the XComs, which is a group of operatives who have been recruited by this mysterious organization to go do these side missions that aren't really in the espionage world, but are dealing with some other thing that needs fixing kind of situation. And that one came out. The XComs came out in November, and that's the book I'm writing right now. I'm the second book in that, so I'm about a third of the way, quarter to a third of the way in that book, and that should be out September, October, I think. And then I am hoping between the end of XComs and when I have to start the next Quinn, that I might squeeze in another sci-fi fantasy kind of thing, because that's where my love of writing started when I was a kid in that area. And so I'm always drawn back to wanting to do those. Those are more for me than anything else.
Yeah.
But I love dipping my toe in that area. So
yeah. That's interesting. That's very sort of Ian Banks and Ian M. Banks, and he always. Although I think I did read something from him once, because I love an Ian Banks sci-fi, and people assume that he wrote the posh novels, The Wasp Factory, that got the Booker for creative reasons, and the sci-fi for fun. And for money, and he said it was the other way around. He loved writing his sci-fi, but actually it was those other books that made him the money, the creative stuff.
That's funny.
But yeah, he loved. I mean, I love my sci-fi, and maybe I should turn my hand to that once I finish my military thriller, which I will finish.
Well, the thing is, with independent publishing, you can write it all.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to worry about it. Your publisher isn't telling you what you need to write. I could have never written these if I was still, at least not under my own name. I couldn't have written them while I was still with Random House.
Yeah, and that brings us back to the glorious freedom of self-publishing and the liberating nature of that. Look, it is freedom. There is a sense of fear that comes with the freedom, but there is also the freedom that adds. And I've been indie published now since 2011, so that's 6 years, more than 6 years now. So what's it they say? Freedom is not free.
In this case also, yes.
Yeah. works every way.
Right.
Brett, it's been brilliant talking to you, and I don't think we've done an interview where the time has flown by as it has in this chat.
Great.
So I've really enjoyed it.
Good. I had a great time too.
Thank you very much. And if somebody would like to be Brett's marketer, you can drop us an email at SPF, and we will put you in touch. And we won't even take a percentage. We'll leave all that percentage work.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks, Brett.
All right. Thank you.
I forgot to ask him whether Brett Battles is his real name.
It seems almost too good to be true, doesn't it? But I think, as far as I know, it is.
Yeah, it's a great author name if you want. Really lovely chatting to Brett, and you start off some interviews, and you wonder how long it's going to last, because Brett's is a relatively he does what he does. It's not as if he's come to us with some area of marketing to talk about, but actually that hour just flew by, and absolutely loved chatting to Brett. Yeah, like I said, an early riser. Are you an early riser?
I am, but mostly because of my children. So this morning I rose at 1:45 a.m. because my daughter wanted a drink. So that was great. Now I normally get up about 6:30, and I'm at my desk after dropping Freya off at school at no later than 8:30. So it's pretty good. I'm more of a morning person than an evening person.
But I think Brett has, I think he's got his dog in the house. I think he just gets up and he works quietly. And that is something people do that in a quiet house. That's the time where you can just sit there.
Another author called Craig Martell who I'll be meeting next year when he comes over and there's a conference, 20 books to 50k. I think they're having a conference over here in February outside London. And I think he lives in Alaska and he gets up and starts working at 3 a.m, which frankly is...
In Alaska? Mind you, is there a difference at 3 a.m. to 3 p.m?
I actually imagine it's quite light at that time. But he has a very, very early start. So I don't think I could manage that. No. My kids certainly wouldn't make that possible. But early suits me. Others work late. It's just horses for courses.
It might send you a bit screwy, I think, getting up every day, or certainly me a bit screwy. Now, people may have just bumped into you in Florida, and they'll be wondering why you haven't mentioned that or said hello to them. And we should say that we are pre-recording this particular batch of podcasts. It's the beginning of the summer and the vacation period, and it's a good idea, I think, for us to record these in a go now, be more sort of live week to week in the autumn. But you are, as we are recording this, due to go off to the RWA conference in Orlando, I guess?
That's right, yep. So I'll be in a Disney hotel at the same time.
Which one?
You're in a Disney hotel.
I am.
My one looks like a swan. So I've seen pictures of it. It does look, frankly, a bit weird. But, yeah, John is...
the dolphin.
There you go, yeah.
The
John
Dolphin.
It's called the Dolphin, yeah. So that's where the conference is held. And I'm going to be doing... provided I get the slides. This is all a bit kind of tenuous when it comes to timing, but as we record this, I still haven't done the slides yet, so I need to do that next week. I'm looking at John. So John will be making them beautiful so that I'm ready to go on stage. But I'm going to be talking about kind of a marketing update, the basics that authors need, and then providing them with a launch plan for their next book. So taking the platform that they've built with the social media, mailing list, cool new things like Amazon ads, Facebook bots, all that kind of stuff, and putting everything together in a launch that will hopefully add a few thousand new readers to their careers as they get ready to launch their next romance book. So yeah, looking forward to that. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, good. And funnily enough, I'll be in a nearby Disney hotel with my family on a annual vacation. We probably won't go to the RWA conference because I don't think it will go down very well. So I shall be on a roller coaster with my arms in the air like I just don't care.
I'll be on a roller coaster, a different kind of roller coaster, hoping that everyone gets something useful out of what I've got to whitter on about.
Yeah, I'm sure they will, Mark. I'm sure they will. Okay, good. Thank you very much indeed to our guest, Brett Battles. Just a reminder, if you go to patreon.com/SPF Podcast, an opportunity to get more involved in the podcast if you want to. Thank you very much indeed for listening. It's always a pleasure and never a chore. And we'll see you next Friday.
You've been listening to the Self-Publishing Formula podcast. Visit us at selfpublishingformula.com for more information, show notes, and links on today's topics. You can also sign up for our free video series on using Facebook ads to grow your mailing list. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.